Hello, today's January 14th. It's the beginning of the week, and we're here with the news, but it's like depressing news because it's government and security, so you're going to feel real bad.
It's not the beginning of the week, Krista.
Well,
it's Tuesday.
It's like kind of the beginning of the week. It's the first part of the week. It's the first part. And you have to listen to security and government, and you're going to be like, wow, I really needed a pick-me-up today, and I don't have it.
There was a lot of overlapping stories here, so I put these together just because there's a lot of bad government security this week. Surprise. And the first one is an echo of an argument that we've heard so many times before, and both sides so far have been adamant, and no one seems to be giving in, but that doesn't stop them from coming back time after time.
The FBI has asked Apple to unlock another shooter's iPhone. This is the one from Florida. The agency wants to unlock 2 devices linked to a recent Florida shooting.
This was the naval base.
So I think this is part of a larger PR campaign, because if you just wait long enough, the phone will be unlockable. It wasn't 2 weeks ago that we discovered that, or we covered the news that there was some kind of a use after free bug. So you don't need Apple's help to unlock these devices. You just have to wait for a vulnerability to be found, and then you can unlock the devices at some amount of time later. These phones, probably vulnerable to that use after free.
And this one is not like I don't know. If that was an act of terrorism, maybe this is a present danger. Do we have any proof of that? I guess they're not telling us, right? Krista, what do you think about this?
All I could focus on was this weird stock image, because it's like, are they trying to show like the two sides fighting? But why do they pick the thing to go toward each other instead of pulling apart if you're trying to show conflict? Like
Maybe this is like prison bars.
I don't understand it.
Have you ever noticed that the United Nations logo is a globe inside of prison bars?
It's an immovable force meets, or an immovable object meets an infinite force or whatever. That's what the picture is.
Let's hope that the FBI and Apple are neither of those two things.
I worry about the deeper implications because, the well-meaning but ultimately stupid public will be like, oh, this seems like a reasonable request. And it's like, it's not.
But it's like they've eroded enough away at that point that it's like, well, I already do all these other things. Might as well just give them access to my house, too.
Well, like you mentioned, the last time this happened, they withdrew the request after they were able to gray key it.
Yeah.
So, you'll find out eventually. I don't know. Even if we have to suffer a shooting as horrible as it is, I think it's better to have some security from these monsters. And speaking of monsters, Frontier Communications, they had a fun little business practice. See, they didn't want you to use your own modem, so they would charge you. And when questioned about that, they said, no. Even if you do have your own modem, we have to add that charge still, because those support requests are really frustrating, and we hate dealing with those. And then when questioned further about how they dealt with those, they said, we don't support those.
You're on your own.
So the $10 was for what? And this has been going on for how many years?
Infinite years.
So literally ever since I started getting internet access on my own.
The slow grinding wheels of government have finally caught up.
The U.S. finally prohibits ISPs from charging for routers they don't provide. This just seems like a foregone conclusion that would already be in the law. Like, how is that not already in the law?
But that seems like that's just common sense.
Why did we need to make changes to do this?
Are other industries allowed to do that? Like, just charge for things they don't actually provide?
I'd probably, it's not really another industry, but TV, they probably do stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure that if I just set up a lemonade stand and started charging people that passed by, it's like, oh, here's your bill. It's like,
There's a charge for raspberries on here. And it's like, but this isn't raspberry lemonade. And it's no. But
not even anybody that requested lemonade, just... I'm going to give you this.
You are naive to think you could ever get the licensing to start a lemonade stand.
Yeah.
There's no chance.
You don't even have plumbing to get a sink.
When questioned about this, Frontier said, if this law does go into effect, we will honor it.
Until then, you're on your own. It's like, wow, that's ballsy.
Going to keep doing it. We had our little brush with Iran recently. Iran, as someone corrected us in the comments.
Oh, is it Iran? I actually don't know.
Don't be that person. But Iran, anyway, other people don't change their pronunciation when they have accents, so I'm not going to either. Their people were probably a little bit angry that we assassinated one of their citizens with no real declaration of war.
It's been since the banana wars that we've done that so openly.
And so they retaliated in whatever way that they could.
Unpatched US government website gets owned by a pro-Iranian script kiddie. That's not what the headline should have been. The headline should have been, the federal government is still using Joomla in 2020.
and a Joomla module from 2012. Oh my God. I mean, you might as well have a neon sign with a siren on it.
Yeah.
It says hack here.
We finally got the last Joomla site that we had to support shut down in like 2017. We had a little party for that. That was amazing.
So yeah, it was something, I can't remember the name of the thing. It was Federal Deposit Library. I don't even know what that is, but no one seems to care because they've been hacked before, and they were just like, "Listen, we don't have a budget for this. Patch it back together.
We'll be glad to patch it for you
for a small fee."
Like I said, they don't have the budget. Now let's flash back to
let's rewind
to 2012.
It's rewind time.
I know. Was it his first term? That was 08, right?
Yeah.
Oh wait, yeah.
When Mr.
First
Barack
election.
Hussein Obama came
I voted
into
it.
power in the U.S. presidency. And he had a beautiful idea, and that was that this burgeoning world of wireless communication, smartphones should be available to poor people. And thus was born the Obama phone, as it has been called. And here we are, so many years on, and it's a tainted legacy, I guess we should say.
The U.S. government-funded Android phones come pre-installed with unremovable malware. Phones were sold to low-income people under the FCC's Lifeline Assistance Program. So this is not incorrect, but this is also not really news. A lot of very inexpensive phone plans come pre-installed with spyware because, quote-unquote, part of the deal is that you are going to literally submit to invasive observation for consumer data and selling your data and like your behavioral statistics and all this other kind of stuff. That literally subsidizes the cost of the device.
Now, when I ask about this, the ISPs say that's not malware. But what the security researchers figured out is, it's not exactly the same malware that we've seen. Now, we're talking about malvertising and tracking. Those are the two things. But what they did find was that huge swaths of code were copied in whole, copy-pasted from actual malware to create the ISP tools.
Not in this article, but I've seen other researchers. You know how like fraudulent advertising, they have like the bot farms where like they click ads and it's basically a money laundering scheme. There's a couple of researchers that have a suspicion that this type of malware is linked to those kind of bot farms. Because how would you distinguish that kind of traffic? Like you use the phone normally, you are a real person, and then the malware is like, oh, my owner's asleep. Let me just have a browser tab running in the background, clicking some ads, laundering some money. That kind of traffic would be basically undetectable to Google.
And there's no way out. You can't really remove it or you will destroy the functionality of the phone, and they're not removing it because to them, that's subsidizing the cost of those $40 phones.
Yeah.
So, I guess just get more money.
Just have more money.
Yeah.
Easy
That's the
solution.
thing that you're going to need to do.
Although in other news, it turns out that Samsung, there's an app on Samsung S9 and 10 phones that was the same level of malware. It was like the phone cleanup application that was bundled with it, and it was like, oh, phone's home to China. Whoops.
What doesn't at this point?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what doesn't. AI that studies imagery, satellite imagery, because now that's been banned.
The U.S. announces an AI software export restriction, a narrow ban targeting AI tools that analyze satellite imagery. I don't think this is going to be effective. So, I mean, basically it's like, hey, we've got satellite images. Let's take a look at the pictures and see if we can detect like boats at the harbor and figure out what boat it is and stuff like that. And the U.S. is saying this is immediately weaponizable by China. We should perhaps not publish this on the internet.
Great stock photo.
This stock photo says to me that it doesn't matter whether you're a communist or a capitalist. Your brain is still just a number of data points to be collected by the government.
Yeah.
I would use
like
the word
that.
harvested instead of collected.
It should be animated and the characters should lean forward and kiss.
And then like the
They're the
little
same.
dots should connect through their kissing mouths
Yeah.
to show humanity joining together.
That is
Yeah.
kind of a theme on Level 1. It's like when the U.S. government does something really insanely terrible and the Chinese government does really insanely terrible.
Hey, we're the same. That is the bright spot of your Tuesday. Is that, we are the same, but in equally horrible ways.
Now, the other interesting caveat about this that further undermines its usefulness is this only applies if you have a GUI. If you're command line harvesting satellite data imagery, go for it.
Yeah, it's so narrow that it's useless, but it was useless even before then. So I don't like. This is the kind of thing. We got some Huawei stories later in the business section too, but this kind of thing doesn't make sense on so many levels because there's also like the Huawei ban, and it's like, oh, we've got to be careful about China and blah blah blah. But the best way, if those are legit concerns, the best way to do that is to have the intelligence organizations of the host country give their citizenry the tools to defeat the state-sponsored malware from the other guys.
Perhaps you've forgotten about the popular Obama-era domestic terrorism push, where they were talking about how the real enemy are the white nationalists until we got China as the new enemy. But there was a little while there that we didn't have a good enemy, so we had to conjure one from our own people. So, you are worried about constant surveillance, right? If you're in China, it's right there in your face. It's hanging from poles. And we're getting more and more of that here, but now we've got the Ring doorbells, which is way better, right? Because you buy it and you keep it up and you
Someone gets paid for that.
Yeah, really. And it's good for the economy, but there are probably some cameras you didn't expect. And some of them are a little bit disgusting.
FBI surveillance vendor threatens to sue tech reporters for heinous crime of doing journalism. If you only check out one article this week, you have to see the child car seat surveillance device.
I see. I prefer this one.
The tombstone.
My granny always said the deepest circle of hell was reserved for grave robbers, and now you can see.
Well, so
who's robbing your grave?
It's not that. It's more like mafia. It was like, hey, I mean, these are just incredible. A Shop-Vac, it's not just a camera and a Shop-Vac. This is not the level of sophistication that we're talking about here. We're talking about heat maps, face recognition, 360-degree pan tilt zoom cameras. Like, this little Shop-Vac has more surveillance capability than your local 7-Eleven.
And 2-day battery. So you can pop it in place, set up the meat, and then go there. Someone in the comments of this article pointed out that Shop-Vac is a copyright. They don't have the license to sell that.
Well, wait, what if they start with a Shop-Vac? Like they buy a Shop-Vac and then modify it. That would be okay.
Is that okay?
Only if you pay a licensing fee, right?
No. If as long as it's 1-to-1, it's totally okay.
But it's no longer a vacuum because they have to scoop the guts out.
Yeah.
The guts.
That seems wrong.
The innards of the Shop-Vac.
Not shown is the car seat that you mentioned, but they have a variety of objects that can be added. Now, here's the thing. This is from a brochure that you were never supposed to see. No one was ever supposed to see it except for cops. Now, was it Gizmodo that filed the Freedom of Information? No, I think it was Vice. Motherboard. And so they went to a local PD and got their Freedom of Information, and this was one of the documents. But it's supposed to be a secret.
That's why they were threatening to sue. I guess the idea is if you're a criminal and you look through and you look for these devices, now they have to look for all new different kinds of devices to co-opt because the sophisticated criminal will learn what these devices are and remember them and be like, oh man, I can't go be sad about my criminal cohort's death at the cemetery because I saw one of these.
You can't pour one out for your homie.
Yeah, for one of these surveillance tombstones. It's
wow.
But the feds very conspicuously taking pictures at a mob funeral is a staple of all mob movies and TV. So are you telling me they don't really do that? Do they use the gravestones?
They use the gravestones now. It's easier.
And speaking of police doing things that they probably shouldn't and may ultimately prove to be ineffective, because, people learn about it and then they work around it. How about facial recognition? We talk a lot about that. Now, some places have banned it, but before they banned it, they had it for a long time. And we get to learn how it panned out.
The police department collected 65,000 faces in San Diego, and nothing from this led to any kind of arrest or any sort of actionable intelligence on a case.
7 years. Now, to be fair, the first 3 of those might not have been the best facial recognition. It's been maturing over the time. But you'd think those last 4 would have at least hit pay dirt one time. But I guess not. Too bad. New York, we have a couple of stories about New York here. And the first one has to do with payments. Cash is not good enough. We need something else.
New York is proposing the creation of a public Venmo. This seems like an ad campaign for Venmo.
Maybe this is just me, like, finally kind of getting old, but, like, I just don't understand. Like, Venmo makes me uncomfortable transferring money to people randomly in the way that you'd send a text message.
It makes New York uncomfortable, too, because what's not really directly said, but the article kind of mentions a little bit, is also that tax revenue. It's like, we're missing out on the tax revenue side of things.
They point out that certain people don't have bank accounts. Why wouldn't you have a bank account? Well, they mention a couple of valid reasons, one of which is the minimums, but can't you get a zero minimum?
Oh, they usually are very terrible. Like, they'll do the transaction reordering to maximize the amount of fees that you're charged. And so a lot of poor people are like, nope, not going to do it with a bank because they've dealt with a bank that's been terrible to them.
I guess that's true. Now, you could maybe do like some online banking, but if you're really not making much money, that might be difficult.
Local banks, I think it's like $100 minimum.
Well, that's a lot of money to some people, but especially if you live in New York.
Yeah.
But they point out inability to secure a government ID, meaning you're in the country illegally. And as you point out, to know those people's transactions for tax purposes would be quite useful. So
nice try, New York.
Maybe don't trust that if you're illegal in this country. Maybe stick with cash, as inconvenient as it is.
Is this the American equivalent of that Chinese application that people would download to, like, learn the virtues of the honored leader, and it turns out it was just terrible spyware?
Well, this one has more function, I guess.
Yeah.
At least it's convenient, right? And also in New York, they have a plan, again, something for the poor people, something for the people who are left out. And I think they've maybe chosen the worst possible way to implement it, but here we go.
New York City Internet Plan aims to provide all New Yorkers with broadband access. The city is set to partner with private internet service providers to increase connectivity around New York City. How insane is this? That we have New York City, which has an insane population density, and New York City has to partner with private companies to bring internet access to everybody, because it is literally the lowest cost anywhere in the world to bring internet access to, like, you wire an apartment building, and then all of a sudden all gazillion residents of that apartment building can get internet access. It's literally the easiest thing in the world to bring internet access to people in New York. Why would this ever happen? Oh, wait, it's because there's collusion among businesses so that they don't compete, so that they screw the customer as hard as possible.
I almost took an aside because this clickbait got me so hard. Smart diapers?
Yeah. I have to admit, like, I was trying not to watch the ad for the baby diapers.
Is this poop being graphed?
Yes.
Wow.
Listen, we're living in the future now.
Remind me to put that in the nonsense section. When we're doing nonsense. That's amazing. Smart diapers.
Yeah.
I guess you would have, like,
you can't just do the sniff test anymore.
You'd have some sort of waterproof insert that you would rescue from the diaper before you disposed of it.
Probably, yeah.
That seems nightmarish. What if you have a blowout?
Well, what if something happens? And
I guess the app would keep you from getting a blowout.
But what if that battery catches fire?
The app would pop up and it's like, poop mass levels at critical. Please change immediately.
Like a little pressure gauge.
You press on the baby's tummy and it's like, oh no.
And continuing on with the bad government ideas theme, Vermont has a bill that this is such a colossal waste of time. Don't you think there should be a punishment for this guy?
Yeah. Vermont bill would ban cell phone use for anyone under 21.
Oh, come on.
But they cite, like, distracted driving statistics and some of that other kind of stuff. They make it sound like they're going to ban anybody under 21 from having a cell phone while they're driving, but that's not actually what it is.
No, it's literal, like, if you're caught with a smartphone. Now, at the end of the article, it's like, really? And that guy's response, the guy who introduced the bill, was like, yeah, I probably won't vote for it.
What?
So he's just wasting everyone's time trying to make some kind of stupid social commentary.
Is that how they do things in Vermont?
I don't know.
They have delicious cheese, but this makes me just, question their whole existence.
I got to say, though, I would lower the age to like 16, but I would totally support this. I mean, on one hand, it's government overreach, and I have to say no to it for that reason. But there's a big part of me that's like, oh man, that would be amazing. That would really improve things.
As someone that has encountered teenagers, I guess, young people that haven't learned about the whole distracted driving, like, it's really insanely terrible. And that's coming from somebody that probably hasn't learned as good as they should have themselves.
Well, that's the understatement of the century.
We put our lives in Wendell's hands every day.
It's fine.
NHS, I forget what that stands for. Something health
National
system,
Health System, I
I
think.
guess. It's not from the U.S., so I don't care about it.
It's the
But
British system.
it has a problem, and I can only imagine how annoying this is because I have to try to remember a lot of passwords to a lot of different things, and I can't.
NHS gets £40 million to cut login times on its IT systems. Switch to single sign-on systems at one hospital alone saved 130 staffing hours a day.
Didn't they say you had to log in, like, you would log in one place and then it was like, oh, but there's another login here. So it was literally just like a chain.
Every piece of equipment now has a login with it. I imagine it's licensing. And then, so it's like, oh, we're going to do this kind of scan. Okay, now I need this. Oh, and now I need to unlock the drug drawer. Okay, now I need another password. Oh, now I need to do this. And it just keeps going and going and going. And they can't cache the passwords because what would be the point of that?
Didn't that used to, I know, so we use an old drug cart for our setup here. Didn't it just have a key? Like, didn't every nurse just carry a key
I think
for
there
the
was
drug?
like a button you could press and it would release.
Yeah, it had an electronic lock as well. So, like, if the computer was like, all right, whatever, and it would pop open.
Seems like just making, I guess physical keys, in theory, people could take those home and make copies, but it's better than having to log in 20 times.
Well, it's still, even if you open it manually, it would still log that it was opened.
Yeah.
I'm sure no one would ever steal drugs.
No, not at all.
Well, we aren't alone here in the U.S. in terms of having our police want our cell phone data desperately, so much that they'll spend tons of money to bypass it or just try to abuse the laws and get it. But in some parts of the world, they don't really do the asking part, and people are concerned.
Hong Kong police seize 3,721 cell phones. This article goes out of its way to say that, well, normally there is a warrant involved, but this has been sort of a pattern the last few weeks in the Hong Kong protests.
But they're basically enemies of the state, so of course there's going to be a warrant. Yeah. What judge would have the balls to say no to one of these requests in China?
We were talking about earlier this week, like, I wonder what Iran has distracted us from, and I guess that was probably it. Them seizing cell phones.
Yeah, the whole China thing is really on the back burner at this point, which is probably good for the economy and stuff. But I'm sure they'll bring that back up when they need to.
And the sequel will come out. So
they're also accusing the police of installing spyware, and they should be going through certain I don't know if the warrants are like this in China. In the U.S., a warrant has to be pretty specific. Like, we need this and we need it for this reason. But they're saying no. They're looking at everything. They're taking down my contacts. They're investigating those people, and it's overreach. So, not hard to believe. Meanwhile, in Japan, while everybody's distracted, they're just moving forward with their huge technology. And we've all seen like the city of the future. Remember those old 1950s newsreel, like the city of the future things?
Mm-hmm.
You ever seen one of those? And Disney had the city of the future. I wonder if they still have that. I mean, you'd have to update that every 5 years, I guess. But Japan is going to do it IRL.
Toyota will transform a 175-acre site in Japan into a prototype city of the future. The site will house up to 2,000 people and break ground in 2021. Good deal of those 2,000 people are going to be people that are working for Toyota. The whole idea of this city is to interweave and provide a mesh of high-speed vehicles and then things like e-scooters and then pedestrian-only accessibility.
And a lot of those vehicles are supposed to be robots. And robots in the home. So
whether you want them or not.
Yeah, well, that's what they bring up is the sacrifice you make here, of course, is that literally everything is likely to be gathered about you, all of your data.
Well, and there's probably going to be like a little shopping center in the middle, right? So then you're being surveilled there the entire time. And
yeah, and it's all Toyota branded stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Toyota baby formula.
I noticed that Toyota is really stepping up their social media campaign stuff. Like at CES, they did a thing with Austin Evans. So I mean, things are changing inside Toyota.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to do something, right? The old school car companies are losing their luster. It's all about Tesla now. Now, this is our shortest episode of the week, so I want to take a little aside here before we switch to security and talk about hoarding. Now, Wendell, you've had an experience with hoarding recently.
Yeah.
And it's a dark thing.
It really is.
And based on the basement of this building, it could be a genetic component.
Could be. Although you have to admit that when we had the dumpsters, there was a great purge and a lot of things were...
I think that was done in spite of you.
Okay.
It was, yeah. Usually the dumpster comes out when Wendell's away on a business trip. And then things get dumped.
So hardware hoarding, it's a real problem. And I think our audience, compared to most other audiences, struggles with it more, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, probably.
So you tell yourself, oh man, I have the perfect project for this rack mount server. I got a great use for this. And you slide it onto the already teetering tower of rack mount servers. And you hasten toward the day when a dispassionate first responder drags your desiccated corpse out from under that pile. And you don't want that. You don't want to be a hardware hoarder.
Sort of bad, yeah.
But wait, what about the other side of the spectrum? We learned the other day about the Google cafeteria workers. They're unionizing. So let's say you're a Google cafeteria worker, and every day you see those developers and those engineers, and they're flaunting their health insurance and their ability to sleep with their legs extended, and you hate them. And you tell yourself, I'm going to be that one day. I'm going to learn. But you can't hardware hoard, because the $1,500 a month tool shed that you live in, there's no room. And even if there was room, that single power strip on an extension cord, you're going to burn that place down.
Yeah.
So, in both of these scenarios, you could save yourself misery, possibly your life, with 6 simple letters.
Oh, is that Linode?
It's Linode.
How did you not get...
Yeah, you can have your hoarding complex in the cloud. You can actually hoard your data in the cloud. Linode is somebody that we've used at Level 1 forever and ever and ever. It runs our website and all of our other stuff. It can grow with you or it can shrink with you, depending on what you want to do. You want to run your own VPN? Not a problem. You can
And they'll
totally do
upgrade
that.
it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, we've got every file that everybody has ever uploaded to the forum since the dawn of time. Yep, we got it. Linode. Woo!
I hope that everyone in the audience is really happy with that advertisement, because that was good. That was really good.
There's a link.
I kind of got where Ryan was going with it, and then I was like, no, that's definitely...
I had no idea. I had no idea. But there's a link below that gives you $20 off, and you should really enjoy that.
Well, I
Your
knew,
ability to
it
sleep
couldn't have
with
been
your
anything to
legs
do with
extended.
this, right? 'Cause obviously.
Yeah.
Pick up on that.
I was like, oh God, are they finally having an intervention? Because I thought I genuinely thought I did a good job throwing stuff away.
You think we would film you having an intervention?
Well, no,
You know
no.
what's-
I mean,
That's
know,
good
it's-
content, you know. We
The
have
funniest thing is you have both all that extra hardware and Linode.
Yeah.
I gotta have everything. Gotta have the best. of
The
both
hardware
worlds.
doesn't bother me so much as the boxes. There's so many boxes.
There's so many boxes, and I've taken all those boxes that are out front. Those are slated to go to downstairs, and like with those piled up there, it seems like a lot. But you look in here, and you'd never know that all of those boxes came from in here.
Yeah. We originally had like a plan. We had a shelf where we were gonna like,
We still have it, and I use it for that purpose.
but like I had labeled it like in and out and like needs to be sent back, and like we never, the organization never quite made it, but we do use the shelf. That's true.
Yeah. And sometimes we get to use things for more than one project, so it makes things a
Yeah.
little weird. But Linode, thank you for sponsoring, and check out Linode because you'd be surprised what you can DIY and point and click and self-host, Google Drive or Google Docs and stuff like that. You don't have to give into those services. You can just do it yourself.
I just realized that I thought this started the security section, but there's actually one more government story, because this is kind of both. This was going to be my
Your segue.
my interim story, but this one's not. But it's about India. And India, they have problems with their people sometimes, and like a lot of other governments, when they have those problems, they say, turn their internet off. We'll see how they like it living in the darkness, the dark ages of the early 90s. Let's see how
Comply,
they like
citizen.
that. And but they do have a
years ago.
Supreme Court, and good news.
The Indian Supreme Court has found that the 150-day internet blackout in Kashmir is illegal. So the government has cut Kashmir off from the internet age since August. Now, one thing this article does not say is, did they turn them back on? Because it seems like the answer is no.
No, they do say that as of now, they have a week to review it.
Yeah, but it's not. Well, okay. So, but it's not. Okay.
They won't turn it on until the end of that week.
Yeah.
Do you think they just wanted to keep it off for 2 weeks anyway, and the judge was like, whatever.
It's been way more than 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It's
Has it?
August.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So.
At least their Supreme Court moves faster than ours does.
That's true.
Yeah.
Our Supreme Court can never decide something that quickly. And the other thing that India is doing, and probably will do, is to destroy encryption. And that is the only way to describe it, because the laws that they are talking about would absolutely destroy encryption. They wouldn't make it illegal, but they would make the burden on anybody using it so great that you simply couldn't use it.
It's a Western strategy. Over 24 encryption experts call on India to rethink changes to its intermediary liability rules. And it's like, what an impenetrable headline. So India is saying, hey, if you've got a message board where 2 or more users can contact one another, and you have a lot of users in India, then we need to be able to examine those communications between users in case, quote unquote, problems. So that's bad. So things like Proton Mail or even PGP, like if you had like pretty good privacy, not the other thing.
Not our stream.
If you had that kind of software, if people are communicating in an encrypted way and you can't decrypt it for the authorities, then that makes the service provider liable for whatever those users are doing, which is a terrible and dangerous precedent.
Bad news. So a lot of industry people are getting together and saying, please don't. This is a really bad idea. And I think that's going to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah.
Remember, these are people who turn the internet off when they're angry. Now we are
Your dad.
that was the transition story. Now we are moving into security for real. Wendell, you're thinking about purchasing a new home,
Yeah, maybe.
and it's an older building, right?
Yes.
Have you considered that it might be haunted?
Yes, actually, there's some strong evidence of that already.
Oh, tell us more. I need details.
It was so there's a workshop. I mean, I don't know. I guess because this is a short episode, there's time. This particular building or this particular house has a workshop, which is what makes it so attractive, because the workshop is not figured into the price of the property, not really, and it's a very particular kind of workshop. And I thought that would be really good to have more space to do things, and the hoarding, all that kind of stuff.
And indulging my darkest sides.
So it's been cleaned out because it's an estate sale, and that's the other thing that makes it attractive, because it's not something I would ever be able to afford normally.
Estate sale means somebody probably died there, right?
Yeah.
And so it was so weird wandering around the workshop, because there were just certain things about it that were odd, and the realtor that was with us was like, I have no idea what this is such a weird workshop and such a weird layout and blah blah blah, and just something came over me, and it was like, I bet it was probably model boats or maybe trains. And it turns out that it was model boats and trains.
Aww.
Like, the realtor called back after the thing because they called the other people, and she was like, I just had to tell you because that was creepy AF, because that was literally exactly what it was. And I was like, wow, okay, that's weird.
How does that tell it's haunted? Old people love that kind of stuff. My great uncle, he has like a whole Christmas village he keeps up year round in his garage.
Well, the skeptics would say that it's that whole like Darren Brown thing where you're picking up on
Yeah, probably
subconscious cues.
Yeah.
I'd say the creepier thing that you could find in a workshop would be like plastic sheeting hanging from the ceiling.
There was a lot of that.
50-gallon drum of chloroform.
The other super weird thing about the workshop is that it was completely RF insulated. Like,
Well, that's kind of like if you want to spend time doing your hobby during the winter.
The ghosts can't get out.
Cell phone dead in the building, and it's like, this has to have been done intentionally.
To trap the ghosts. Well,
you have a helper.
That transition didn't work quite as well as I was expecting. Because I was going to say, maybe your house wouldn't be haunted, but what about your modem?
Hundreds of millions of cable modems are vulnerable to the new cable haunt vulnerability. Of course, in the haunting in this scenario, it's not supernatural. It's the bad guys being able to flash your cable modem remotely. So it turns out that modern browsers are sophisticated enough to make outgoing requests from your browser. And this is not a new type of vulnerability. There have actually been a lot of these kind of vulnerabilities. D-Link routers in particular were vulnerable to this. But now it turns out your cable modem, in something in the Spectrum Analyzer software, which will show you like the noisy parts and the good parts of your physical wire cable connection that it can use for sending data. So it's got to like figure it out and juggle some stuff. Turns out there's a vulnerability in that if you use a Broadcom chipset, which is hundreds of millions of modems, and the bad guys can use that to load their own software on your cable modem and persist. So this is extremely bad news.
It also seems like a lot of people copied Broadcom's Spectrum Analyzer code, kind of stole it. So it might not just be Broadcom chips.
Yeah,
Yikes.
It could be a lot more. Krista, what do you think of it? I mean, it's this little piece of coax is interesting, I guess, but I don't know. I look at that and I see horseshoe.
I don't mind that, but I don't think it would reduce very well. So like if you had to print that at a small size, it would just become like a blob.
I wonder if the article author knows that, you know, sometimes intelligence operatives and government agents are known as spooks, in which case, bravo, excellent headline.
There's an even less pleasant use of that as well. So it could be unfortunate if we use that. Well, Firefox had a bit of a scare this week. The good news is
Nothing is sacred.
it's all patched up. But the bad news is if you're resisting that little arrow in the corner, you probably should stop.
Mozilla says a new Firefox security bug is under active attack. So it turns out that there's a vulnerability in the sandbox code the JavaScript runs in, and that JavaScript might not be running in a sandbox on your computer. So patch.
Yeah, I saw it was like urgent Firefox update, and I was like, I started to put it off, and then I was like, well, whatever, I'm gonna close out anyway. And then the next day that broke. I was like, oh.
Firefox will just straight up stop letting you do things if you.
Yeah, if it's important, yeah.
Which is annoying, but I understand. Well, we've talked about a lot of different companies that have been caught using call center workers to try to make the AI better. They actually listen to stuff. Of course, we had Facebook doing that. Amazon, Jesus. Amazon's up to their elbows in it. And it's one after the other. No one seems to learn from other people's mistakes.
Skype audio graded by workers in China with no security measures. Yeah. Microsoft contractor says he was emailed login after minimal vetting. So remember how Skype used to have end-to-end encryption? And remember how it was like, oh, that's silly. Why would they take out end-to-end encryption? And now this is where we are.
So this guy was a British expat. And they were like, oh, you speak English? Excellent. Here's a login. Go listen to this stuff. And he talked about how not only he got his own login, but it was a permutation of his first and last name. And you could guess anybody else's if you knew their first and last name. But the passwords were all the same password for everybody. And you couldn't change it.
Safe.
How many times have we seen that where somebody just emails a spreadsheet and is like, you guys are lines 3, 4, and 5. And it's like, what about all the other 20 lines?
And they actually made him show up to an office for a little while, but they were like, you know what, why don't you just work from home? Just here, take this laptop.
Better work-life balance.
And use that login we gave you. And so he pointed out that he could have sold that login. He could have recorded all the stuff at home and kept it. Not great. And this was not just Cortana type stuff, but full Skype calls. And he said he heard a lot of stuff. So maybe think twice about that.
Literally everything is terrible.
We also have another instance of ransomware. And this time, yeah, it's bad, but they should have known better. I almost used this one for the Linode story because it's another VPN that you can't be trusted.
Unpatched VPN makes Travelex latest victim of REvil ransomware. Yeah, you can run your own VPN with Linode. That's a double bonus right there, Linode. You can point and click. You got your own VPN. It's a lot smaller surface area for targets.
We did the ad. That's good.
So Travelex, they do money changing, currency exchange, things like that. There's a lot of reporting requirements and things like that. So they use VPN connections between their locations. But the VPN software, the VPN appliance that they use had a vulnerability, and they just never updated it. And so then all of their stuff was encrypted, literally all of it, because the bad guys broke in that way, charging millions of dollars of ransom. So it's pretty nuts.
And the ransom keeps going up the longer they take to pay it. And then after a certain amount of time, I think maybe it was 10 days, they're going to just delete it, which is all the transactions in history.
Which puts them in a bind in terms of reporting.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's some like unsettled stuff in there. I wonder if they had full backups of everything.
It doesn't sound like it.
Why would you need backups in a financial industry that's fast moving?
You know who could give them those online backups that are secure and encrypted?
How much of a bonus are we going to give them? Jesus. Well, we have an exciting new technology, WebAssembly, and it's not really catching on all that much in the mainstream, but there is one use that it is super catching on with.
Half of websites using WebAssembly use it for malicious purposes. That's the top 1 million, 1,639 out of the top 1 million use WebAssembly. WebAssembly is great. WebAssembly runs in a sandbox, but it runs native code, so it's insanely fast compared to JavaScript. Half of the websites use it, well, not half, but a large percentage of it use it for gaming, and then it's just straight up malware stuff, and then cryptocurrency mining, which this group said that cryptocurrency mining was probably malicious, but I don't think cryptocurrency mining in and of itself is malicious, but malvertising, oh yeah, definitely.
Well, they're using WebAssembly to crypto mine on somebody else's hardware, I think is.
Well, that might be an interesting business model for the web, though. Like, hey, if you use this website, let us do a little bit of crypto mining. And if you're upfront about it, I think that's not necessarily malicious.
They tried that, and everybody shut it down.
It's because it was
all the browsers blocked it.
JavaScript based, not WebAssembly wasn't really a thing then.
So you think it was just because of the performance issues? I don't know. I think it was more than that. I think people get weird about that. Krista, this logo is kind of terrible, don't you think?
I don't think it's terrible.
You like it?
It's nondescript, like it doesn't really tell you anything about what it does, but it is legible and it would work in different configurations and sizes.
We've had like 5 or 6 people over the years accuse us of crypto mining on the Level 1 website, because the animation in the background,
it does take forever. It loads really slow now.
We're using on enter animation frame, but it still takes a lot of horsepower if your computer's shitty.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We're not actually doing anything. It's literally just this animation that's like 5 years old now.
Yeah, it's like literally not doing anything. I'm trying to do it with polygons now. It turns out that's hard.
Yeah, it's fine. We can just use a background image, and then people won't accuse us of,
Yeah, I think that thing's lost some of its glamour.
Yeah, it was cool at the time. But
now, if you're sitting there thinking about that Skype story with your mouth open, and it's like, oh my God, what have I said on Skype?
Have I used the dancing man emote too much?
Oh no, this is voice.
Yeah, voice, video, whatever.
It's all those late night salacious phone calls you had with strangers on the internet.
I just like the emojis.
Well, no, you bring up a good point though, because like if they're doing this now, like they're just like they have the computational resources to just record everything. You know that like text,
yeah, of course they're using text.
Oh, yeah.
I need to know how many times people use the dancing man emote.
Well, they're not going to give you that information.
I need to know.
No,
disappointing.
You don't have clearance.
He spins around and like.
Now, if you go to China and get a job as an English speaker, maybe you could figure it out then.
It's a piece of investigative journalism that I think I need to do for Level 1.
But both of those things pale in comparison to the horror of someone actually watching you.
Ongoing horror.
And that is what we find. It's the same situation, but the stakes are raised.
Ring fired employees for watching customer videos. We are aware of incidents discussed below where employees violated their policies. A letter from Ring obtained by Motherboard reads,
Not the first time this has happened. And you got to think that guy knew about the first instance, right?
Yeah.
Still, well, I'm gendering. It might have been a female, but something tells me it wasn't. Just couldn't help it. It's like, I know this is wrong. I know I could get fired for this, but I got to look. I got to see.
Have you seen the rings in the trailer parks of Eastern Kentucky? Look at this. People live like this. Have you seen this? It's probably what's going on.
Well, the aforementioned hoarding.
Yeah.
So, they figured it out pretty quickly because they do have excellent logging for the access, and they did fire the person, but that doesn't help if you were the person who was looked at, right?
Yeah.
He still knows.
He knows that you're trying to mimic the dancing moves.
Disgusting.
You're singing in your living room.
So the usual disclaimer, don't buy Ring. It's bad. And that's all we got for today.
What we got for tomorrow?
No one knows.
Business and whatever the smallest one left is, which
No one
I
knows.
think is social media. Because robot was robust this week.
It was.
There was a lot of robots at CES.
Mm.
Oh, we gotta remember to do that diaper sniffing
That'll
story.
be nonsense. Did you say diaper sniffing?
Yeah, that's what I mean. Whatever, diaper tracking, whatever.
Effectively, it is sniffing the diaper.
I guess.
That's like when you have a kid, like, and it's like, oh, is this baby wet? You just you lift the tiny human up to your nose and you sniff their butt like you're a dog.
If you think about, like, let's say there was some science fiction where humans were reincarnated as robots and your karma determined how terrible your robot job was, that's got to be toward the bottom, don't you think?
Baby sniffer. I was thinking like robots trying to learn about human behavior and they see like a human pick up a baby and sniff its butt and it's like, is that normal? Like,
Although I think I would rather be the thing that gets inserted into the baby's diaper than to be one of those sex robots.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you next time.